morning, I'm Bree Driscoll, and here's your Spectrum News. This term from the Supreme Court. Among the remaining cases, the justices will decide if former President Donald Trump is immune from prosecution for his role in the January 6th riots at the Capitol, as well as two cases involving Florida and Texas laws and the power of social media companies. Hurricane Beryl bringing life-threatening storm surge, violent winds, and flash flooding to the Caribbean coast. The storm had reached Category 4 strength Sunday before weakening slightly. Beryl is the earliest Category 4 hurricane on record in the Atlantic and the only Category 4 storm ever recorded to form in June. The Justice Department is planning to propose Boeing plead guilty to criminal fraud in connection with two deadly plane crashes involving its 737 MAX jetliners, which killed 346 people combined. Boeing will have until the end of the week to accept or reject the offer, which includes agreeing to an independent monitor. The 4th of July is just a few dependents they'll have to get through the traffic. AAA and Transportation Security Administration predicting record-setting travel days on the roads and in the air. Those are your headlines. Now here's a look at your weather on the ones.
Happy Monday. I'm meteorologist Ferdinand Fuhrer. Here's what we can see across the country here over the next couple days. So one thing, Hurricane Beryl, that's moving into the Caribbean, Category 4 storm. So that blew up pretty quickly. We'll talk a little bit about that. There's storm potential and flooding through the high plains, also going into the Midwest. And then the heat continues across the south. High temperatures for your Monday above average. You can see from Los Angeles all the way to Atlanta.
Thanks so much for joining us here on Spectrum News. I'm Bree Driscoll. Today is Monday, July 1st. Our top story, decision day at the Supreme Court. The High Court issuing its final decisions of the term today. We're expecting to learn how the court viewed former President Donald Trump's claim of presidential immunity, impacting not only the 2024 election, but likely every future president of the United States. Also this morning, President Joe Biden continuing to face criticism following his debate performance last week. Spectrum's national reporter Angie Gonzalez has more.
Former President Donald Trump's claim of absolute immunity from criminal prosecution was the last case argued before the justices this term. The decision could have an impact beyond the 45th president, as the ruling will apply to future presidents.
The case about former President Trump's immunity is fundamental to our constitutional democracy. There's no other way of looking at it. However it comes out, it is a landmark decision.
Previously, the court determined former presidents can't be sued in civil cases for what they did in office, but it has never weighed in on criminal immunity. While the case has been pending at the Supreme Court, the Justice Department's federal election interference case has been on hold. The case stems from Trump's alleged efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election and his ties to the January 6th insurrection. Supporters are optimistic about the court's decision.
I think the president has immunity. It's not about whether he should pardon himself. It's about whether he be prosecuted in the first place for discharging his official duties.
Some legal experts have their doubts.
There is no criminal immunity in this moment anywhere in the law. It's not in the Constitution.
The justices could rule in several ways. They could say the president has no immunity from criminal prosecution, allowing the case against Trump to move forward. They could also establish he has some immunity, but then send it back to a lower court to decide whether his actions related to the case were official acts.
And Angie Gonzalez joins us now. Angie, the talk about President Biden's re-election campaign continues to focus on his debate performance on Thursday and whether he should step aside as the party's presumptive nominee. Is this what Democrats are saying?
Well, President Biden's supporters were out in full force on the Sunday talk shows, Bree, and they were defending him. Now, this despite some of the indications that behind closed doors, they were saying that he should step down after Thursday's performance. Now, President Biden's family used a Sunday gathering at Camp David to urge him to stay in the race and keep fighting despite his debate performance. His surrogates have also been out making the point that the president may have had a bad night, but that's no reason to ignore the good that he's done during his first 3.5 years in the White House, Bree. Now, on the Republican side, we are still seeing supporters of former President Donald Trump continue to say that Biden's debate performance shows he does not have the mental acuity to be the leader of the free world. Bree?
Right, Angie, thank you very much. The first major storm of hurricane season is hitting the Caribbean coast this morning with record-setting Hurricane Beryl. The National Hurricane Center saying the storm is bringing 120-mile-per-hour sustained winds as it targets the Windward Islands. While Beryl has dropped to a Category 3 overnight, it is still the earliest Category 4 hurricane on record in the Atlantic Ocean and the only Category 4 storm ever recorded in the month of June. National Hurricane Center Director Michael Brennan spoke on how the storm will move throughout the week.
Beryl is going to remain a hurricane through most of the week. We could see some weakening as it interacts with land and encounters somewhat less favorable conditions over the western Caribbean, but still expected to be a powerful storm for the next several days.
Forecasters expect a storm surge up to 9 feet in some areas and to 10 inches of rain across multiple islands. Well, we're in the peak of summer travel season with the 4th of July on Thursday. The Transportation Security Administration and AAA saying we could see a record number of travelers this week. Spectrum's Aditi Lamba has the details.
The Transportation Security Administration says airline travel has never been this busy in the history of air travel in the United States. The agency has implemented new technology for security screening this 4th of July holiday, hoping to make the process smooth for travelers.
It's using biometrics to match facial features between the two, and it helps us to identify if that is actually the passenger in front of us. It does a better job than our naked eye.
Sunday is expected to be a peak day for air travel with nearly 3 million people flying. TSA recommends being patient at the airports and arriving early, at least 2 hours before domestic flight and 3 hours before flying internationally, with valid identification.
It starts with the packing, making sure you know what you're doing. Are you checking a bag? Are you bringing an item that cannot go in your carry-on?
Travel experts say a few popular international destinations are London, Rome, and Paris. For those looking for something more budget-friendly, traveling domestically is highly recommended.
For instance, just in upstate New York, there is a wine and cheese trail that rivals some of the best wine in the world in the Finger Lakes region. And you also have the Adirondacks for people who love nature. If you want to be by the water and you don't necessarily want to be paying beachfront prices, maybe consider Lake Michigan.
If you're traveling by car, AAA anticipates record road travel with millions of Americans driving 50 miles or more.
We're looking at the whole week, starting on Monday all the way through the weekend, and we expect significant travel volumes. We're going to exceed numbers that we saw before the pandemic.
Aditi Lamba, Spectrum News.
Another major development in the Boeing saga, the Justice Department offering a plea deal to the airline manufacturer over 2 deadly MAX 737 crashes. Spectrum's Justine Ray has more.
New reporting is from the Associated Press, which says it spoke to 2 people briefed on the plea offer. Now, the fraud charge stems from 2 deadly plane crashes involving Boeing 737 MAX jetliners. In October 2018, a Lion Air flight crashed into the Java Sea, and then in March 2019, an Ethiopian Airlines flight crashed nearly straight down after takeoff. The 2 crashes killed 346 people. According to the AP, the Justice Department told some of the victims' families about the plea offer on Sunday, but some were upset prosecutors are offering a deal instead of pursuing additional charges and a trial. Boeing has until the end of the week to accept or reject the offer, which would also involve an independent monitor. If the company declines the offer, the Justice Department says it would take Boeing to trial. Weeks ago, prosecutors told a federal judge the aerospace giant breached a 2021 deal that protected the company from criminal prosecution. Boeing says it honored the terms of the settlement, which required it to pay $2.5 billion. Justine Ray, Spectrum News.
A Supreme Court decision on homelessness could have lasting implications across the country. Just ahead on Spectrum News, we speak with a man who has battled homelessness and is now getting a second chance through a unique program.
Deal. In this election year, people need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. Join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 Eastern, 8 Central on Spectrum News Plus. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
At Spectrum, we know how much you depend on the reliability of our products and services. Now, we've taken a new step forward in reliability by identifying potential service issues before they become a problem. If you're affected, we'll contact you and help schedule a free service appointment with one of our expert technicians. The proactive maintenance of our network is one of the many reasons Spectrum delivers the most reliable internet speeds in the nation. Spectrum, keeping you connected.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I found hope in the midst of an overwhelming situation.
Alcoholism is a disease that can affect any family. Everyone suffers, but there is help and hope at Al-Anon Family Groups.
Al-Anon gave me my life back. I'm a better father and husband.
Are you in an overwhelming situation because of someone else's drinking? Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Local and virtual meetings are available. Maybe one could work for you. Call 1-866-200-0033 or visit alanon.org/hope.
Good Monday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Ferdinand Fuhrer with a look at your national forecast. So there is the threat for some more severe weather. National Weather Service gives it a 2 out of 5. That's the yellow, saying basically a risk from southern North Dakota all through South Dakota and Nebraska for some of those storms turning severe. Again, the strongest threats or the biggest threats will be gusty winds and damaging winds, but it can't rule out a tornado or some damaging hail as well. And then just a very minor risk out toward Georgia and South Carolina. That's for today. And then as we go in through your Tuesday, the threat shifts a little bit east and south. Iowa, Missouri, and Kansas has the biggest risk there. Still slight, though. And then as we look down toward the south, that threat kind of goes away. That being said, again, we could all see some very heavy rain with these storms. That's why the National Weather Service has a slight risk for excessive rainfall, meaning basically we can get some flash flooding, especially if you see the arrows or the areas in yellow. Also, that coincides with South Carolina or southeast South Carolina and in through Georgia. You see some yellows there, and then a marginal risk out toward the Four Corners where we get some of those heavy downpours on the dry desert earth, and we could lead to some of those arroyos flooding as well. And then as we look into Tuesday, it shifts a little bit farther to the east into Wisconsin, Iowa, and then still we have the threat down in toward the very southern Rockies, or at least out toward southern New Mexico and Arizona. So future cast, we'll see some of those showers start to develop as we go through the afternoon on Monday, but they really start to blow up as we go Monday into Tuesday. By the time we get into Tuesday morning, Wisconsin gets the brunt of that. About 12 hours later, another round develops as we look in the south into Missouri. And then as far as the storms go in through Texas, eastern Texas could see some showers as we go through Monday, and the same deal out toward the Four Corners.
Well, if you're just joining us or heading out the door, here's a look at what you need to know. Major decisions coming down today from the Supreme Court, including one on Donald Trump's presidential immunity and also regulating content on social media. Hurricane Beryl is hitting the Caribbean coast this morning, bringing life-threatening winds and rain. The record-setting storm is expected to bring winds of up to 120 miles per hour and storm surge up to 9 feet in some areas. And Americans are gearing up for Independence Day, and with that comes record-setting travel. More than 100 million Americans will take to the roads and skies for the holiday, bringing a 5.4% increase compared to last year. And that's a look at what you need to know this morning. Israel releasing 55 Palestinian detainees from Gaza, including the director of the territory's main hospital. That's according to the Hamas-run health ministry. Mohammed Abu Salmiya was detained back in November when Israeli forces raided Shifa Hospital. Abu Salmiya accused Israeli authorities of mistreating Palestinian detainees. Israel denies those allegations. Israel accuses militants of sheltering in hospitals and using them for military purposes. The Supreme Court clearing the way for cities to enforce bans on the homeless sleeping outside in public places on Friday. The case is the High Court's most significant ruling on the issue in decades and comes as a rising number of people in the U.S. are without a permanent place to live. California has nearly 30% of the nation's homeless population. Our Taylor Schaub takes a look at one innovative solution in Los Angeles already in play to help get those in need off the streets.
Unzipping his tent never gets old for Kanish Koset.
Come on, Zendaya, come.
Maybe because it's the closest thing he ever felt to a home.
I've never, not one time, had to question whether or not my housing would just be ripped from me. Go. Good girl, Zendaya, good girl.
As he walks around his new community with his new dog, Zendaya, Koset says his struggle started at birth. The son of addicts, he's gone from the streets to the foster care system, back to the streets.
The hardest part has been, honestly, feeling less than human. My son right here.
Maybe never more so than a few months ago, while sleeping on a nearby park bench where he would routinely meet his wife and baby boy, who live in a nearby women and children shelter. He says he was told to leave and not come back.
I always thought that life was just going to be survival. I didn't know that I would ever get to a point in my life where there would be more than just survival.
But then hope arrived. An outreach member from the Urban Alchemy Safe Sleep Village encouraged him to give the place a try. Here, rows of white canvas tents line an empty parking lot, offering the unhoused a safe haven without strict rules on drug use, curfews, or pets.
Not just like people are running around all willy-nilly in here with drugs and things like that, but it's softer. Thank you, boss man, appreciate it.
Each tent costing less than a tiny home at $44,000, includes communal kitchens, sinks, showers, charging stations, and a TV. Ideal for those not ready to live indoors.
This is a perfect model for those that are coming like straight off the streets, not necessarily ready for housing.
A recovering addict who spent years in and out of prison, Carrie Bell is now the director of the Culver City site. She says the organization has helped about 1,500 people across LA this year, with 36% finding permanent housing.
I see people moving forward a lot faster. You know I love you. It's gonna be all right.
For Koset, this village has been more than a shelter. It's been a lifeline. With a new baby on the way, he's working towards becoming a security guard and securing an apartment for his growing family.
This place is giving me a home that I never thought I would have, and I've received love that I never thought that I would receive and that my family would receive.
If it takes a village to tackle homelessness, Koset believes he has found his here.
Taylor Schaub, Spectrum News.
A desperate effort is still underway to try and save part of a group of dolphins found stranded in shallow water off of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Authorities saying 125 dolphins were found stranded in shallow water last Friday. Now, most of the dolphins are back in deep water, but some remain in danger.
Largest mass stranding our team has ever responded to. Most of the animals made it out, but there are a couple groups of animals that have still been close to shore.
When rescue teams arrived on Friday, they said 10 dolphins already had died. Another 2 died yesterday. The Macys 4th of July fireworks display, a spectacle capturing the hearts and eyes of millions each year in New York City and across the country. Coming up on Spectrum News, we give you a behind-the-scenes look at how the magic happens.
Spectrum News Plus. News from a new perspective, dedicated to refreshing storytelling and empowering communities across the nation. With balanced reporting, providing real context and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day.
Here's a look at your forecast across the country.
Local stories, connecting communities. We are Spectrum News Plus. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Good Monday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Ferdinand Fuhr. Quick check of your travel forecast. If you're moving around the country, nice up in Seattle with temperatures in the 70s. Portland, a little warm for you, up in the upper 70s, low 80s. LA above average with some low 80s. Salt Lake City, middle 80s. Denver, some clouds, upper 80s. And Dallas, the heat continues for you right around 100 degrees. A little farther to the east, Milwaukee, upper 60. Louisville, 82. Austin, Texas, of course, you got the heat going as well. Cleveland, 70s. New York, nice in the 80s. And Tampa, off and on Chaparral, Florida, with temperatures in the 90s. So we got some soccer going on. USA versus Uruguay. Kansas City, Missouri, kickoff 8 o'clock tonight. Temperatures in the low 80s. And then we have another game in through Florida. We've got Bolivia versus Panama in Orlando. If you're going to this game, 9 o'clock kickoff, 81 degrees, partly cloudy skies. So a little bit humid there for some soccer. And this, we have a hurricane, number 2 in the Atlantic Basin. This is Hurricane Beryl. Started out a couple days ago as a tropical depression, blew up to a Category 4. That's a major hurricane. You could see the well-defined eye right there. This is making a beeline into the Caribbean. It's going to cross the windward isles here, basically by the time we get into the afternoon hours, as a Category 4. At least that's the forecast. That's for this afternoon about 2 o'clock. And then it's going to kind of make a beeline through the Caribbean, miss Hispaniola, miss Cuba, but it does have Jamaica in the crosshairs. And then finally, by the end of the week, it'll make its way over toward the Yucatan Peninsula, possibly as a Category 2, Category 1, or maybe even just a tropical storm, still several days out. The other issue we're dealing with, of course, is the heat across the United States, at least the southern half of the United States. So we got excessive heat warnings in place. We've got red flag warnings in through the Intermountain West out toward Salt Lake City. Again, hot temperatures, low relative humidities, and some gusty winds. And then also we have the heat advisories, basically from Texas, Oklahoma, all the way to the southeast, and even a little bit into the mid-Atlantic as well. What is happening? Ridges of high pressure, stagnant ridges of high pressure, which aren't moving too much, or at least they're staying pretty close to the U.S. So it does shift a little bit toward the east as we go Wednesday into Thursday, but then out west, a prolonged heat wave where some hotter communities in through Southern California, upwards of 120 degrees over the next 7 days.
USA gymnastics superstar Simone Biles will be packing her bags for Paris this summer after securing qualification for her 3rd trip to the Olympics. Biles clinching an automatic spot on the 5-woman USA team with an easy victory, which essentially is a tune-up for the star Olympian. Biles is returning to the spotlight 3 years after pulling herself out of multiple finals at the 2020 Games to focus on her mental health. The gymnast saying she isn't worried about history repeating itself in Paris. The Summer Olympics kicking off on July 26th. Independence Day is just days away, and preparations are well underway for the Macys 4th of July fireworks show in New York City. Spectrum's Roger Clark is taking us behind the scenes of this year's show from an undisclosed location.
It doesn't look like much now, but the contents of these barges will bring on the boom on the 4th of July. It's the Macys 4th of July fireworks, which will launch at around 9:25 p.m. on the 4th. The show from pyro spectacular Binoculars by Sousa will feature more than 60,000 shells, more than 30 colors, reaching 1,000 feet into the air. Show designer Gary Sousa, he's been doing it for 40 years, says it's a spectacle they've been working on for months.
For the Macys show, we always try to do something new and exciting, something bigger and better than ever. This year, we have some really special shells. Over 30% of the fireworks have never been seen in New York City before.
This year, the show moves to the Hudson River, fired from 5 barges positioned between West 14th and 34th Streets, off the shore of the west side of Manhattan. Sousa says this provides them with a different canvas, so to speak, from the East River shows.
We also have some new equipment to allow us to fire the fireworks at a wider angle. So we're going to have a wider angle, higher altitude, 8 different types of bursts and patterns, changing colors, chasing rings, different effects in the air.
Prime public viewing is available along the Hudson with entry points managed by the NYPD at Christopher and Washington Streets, West 11th and West 12th and Washington Streets, West 29th, 40th, and 41st Streets at 11th Avenue. The Macys Fireworks have been a tradition since the nation's bicentennial in 1976.
So you'll see over 50 pyrotechnic specialists are presently loading all of our 60,000 shells and effects onto our 5 barges. In just a couple of days, we'll be taking these barges over to the Hudson River and at 9:25 firing off for New York City and the nation to see.
For details on attending the big show, head to Macys.com/fireworks.
Roger Clark, Spectrum News.
One of my favorite traditions here in New York City. I'm Bree Driscoll. Thanks so much for watching. Your Spectrum News in 90 is coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
The 2024 election will decide who leads our nation and the balance of power in Congress, impacting all of us. From Capitol Hill to the Oval Office, let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth coverage with our dedicated experts in local politics. Strengthening democracy by informing your community. That's our mission. Available on all of your favorite devices, exclusively on Spectrum.
At Spectrum, our workforce of over 100,000 employees are all located right here in the U.S. You can find them in our stores, in the field, and in our call centers with 100% U.S.-based customer service. Our team works hard to provide the towns, cities, and neighborhoods they live in with the reliable services that everyone counts on, making us one of America's most trusted companies. We're Spectrum, creating jobs and opportunities across the country, and proud to be 100% U.S.-based.
When I never graduated from high school, I realized I wanted to go back to school because I didn't want to work these back-breaking jobs the rest of my life. With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed to come back to school. I felt accomplished, made me feel that I could take on whatever challenges life throws at you.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
My mother was always very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual, and she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn, and she wasn't even really sure where she was at. It was very unsettling for her.
I felt so much better after my son told me, "Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you and we'll figure it out."